All right, so today we start with word 8, devarim, devar, word 8, devarim in plural, because there's 10 devarim, 10 words, 10 categories. And today we're on the 8th one. It is in Shemot. It's also known as Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. It says, Lo tignov. It's very short. It is, of course, lo is the negative article, and they attach that to tigno. You will not steal. It's to steal, to take away by theft, secretly to put aside. So keeping secrets, that's to steal, because you're hiding the truth. The signification taken from the idea of, I have side, to break a side, to take from the side, to deceive properly, to deceive anyone's heart. In other words, their understanding. So to steal is to lie. You're stealing the truth, right? It's to hide something from somebody. That's to steal the truth from them. To steal, you take their watch, it's hidden from them, right? You take the truth, you've hidden it from them. So you see where those come together. It jumps to word 9. And we're in the same verse if you're in the Hebrew Bible. If you've got a new verse, like verse 16, you're in the English Bible, the Christian Bible. But anyway, it says, Lo ta'aneh ve're'acha ed shaker, which is, it starts off with the negative article, of course, the putting the no or not in front of a word. And then this is ta'aneh, which is oppress, to bestow labor upon anything, to exercise oneself in anything, to till the ground, to bring the earth to cultivation, to afflict, to depress, to oppress. So you're being told, do not oppress. And who you're not supposed to oppress? The reacha. That's with your friend. A companion, a friend with whom one has conversation. Friend or companion is also said of a lover, one beloved of a woman, any other person of any other of the human race. When preceded by the word ish, it means another. But what's being said here is you're not going to do this with somebody who's an intimate friend, somebody who's very close to you. Let me give you an example of this. When Jewish students were following their rabbi, he was not considered their friend because he didn't tell them anything, tell them everything. He told them things, but not everything. And so the servant, the student who is the servant of the rabbi, doesn't know everything. He only knows what he's been told, the little bit that he's been given. So the rabbi has been hiding things from him. And why do we hide things from them? Because they're just like babies. You cannot take a newborn baby and feed it a piece of steak, right? It'll choke on the steak. It won't be able to digest it. It won't be able, if it tries to swallow it, it'll probably kill it. It's the same way with the Word of God. And so the rabbi has to withhold, it has to hide certain parts of the truth from these people and let them build up to these things. And so they're not considered to be the friend. But when they are the friend, when they are your equal, when they are somebody who you are in close proximity to, close relation to, you can't do this to these people. And this is the word ed, which is witness. It's a testimony, somebody testifies of something, to bear witness. They use it of a prince and a commander and a legislator because they're the ones that give the witness or take the information from the witness, so that it's used of the same people in that way. So we're not supposed to oppress our friends with a witness that is shaker, that is false. It's a lying witness, to be perjured, to prophesy false things not received from God. Whatever deceives, it's fraud, it's vanity, of course. So what our current president did, he got into the race and he lied about everybody. He was rude to everybody. he was crude and underhanded and all that, and he said that he did that so that he could win, right? Because for him, the end justified the means. His means were underhanded, godless, sinful, and he won. He shouldn't have, because if we were truly a nation under God, everybody would have seen that and said, this man cannot be trusted. But the only thing anyone could see in that election was, yeah, but Hillary. She couldn't vote for her either because she had the same issue. Only, I think it was worse. But either way, bad is bad, evil is evil, right? So the translation here then is: do not commit murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not oppress your friends with a lying testimony. And I don't know if you've caught it so far, but they're all the same thing. This is a different way of saying the same thing. It's different categories of the same thing. In the end, it's going to be about it's lying, and it's murder, and it's adultery, and it's stealing, and all of those things are exactly the same thing. Now, of the word murder, even Ezra said, you shall not murder with your hand or with your tongue. You don't murder with your hand or with your tongue. And see, that's what we saw in this last election. Lying Ted, little Marco, he was murderizing these people with their tongue. We see this with the media going out and just lying through their teeth about everything, particularly concerning Trump. They're murdering with their tongue. They're bearing false witness. They're trying to take him down. Now, they're not literally trying to kill him, but what they've done has caused crazy people to try to kill people. Yeah, this is not good. He also went on and said, or to be a talebearer, or to purposely give bad advice which will lead to his death, or withhold a secret from him which, if revealed to him, could save him from death. It's good advice. Of the word adultery, Hosea compared the relationship between husband and wife to our relationship with God, in that adultery of our covenant was punishable by death. Of the word stealing, even Ezra said that all forms of stealing are included: deceit in accounting, deceit in measurements, deceit in weights, etc. It makes no difference what kind of deceit it is, it's covered by this category. Of the lying testimony, the Sephorno said this was a prohibition of talebearing as well as slander. I agree. It's kind of a Captain Obvious thing, but I do agree with it. Casuto said, you shall not answer, that is, testify concerning any matter pertaining to your neighbor, testimony contrary to the truth, as a false witness. Absolutely correct. So now we're finally at category 10, Shemot chapter 20, or Exodus chapter 20, verse 14 in the English. It'll be verse 17 in the Hebrew, or in the Jewish. All right, literally it says, not shall covet house friend you, not shall covet wife friend you, and male servant he, and female servant he, and ox he, and donkey he, and all that to friend you. Right? You can pretty much get that. But we start off with the word lo, which is the negative article. And this is tachmod. You will not covet. You will not desire. You don't go around wanting what? A bait. Oh, wait, I want a house. No, it's going to be somebody's house in particular, right? And in this series, we've already had this word. It's a house. It's a movable house. Of a tent. It's of a royal palace. It's of a fortress, obviously, of non-movable houses, right? And in Hebrew, the basic idea of a house is a dwelling place. It's an abode, a place where a family lives, it loves, it grows. That's where life takes place, right? Then it says, so now I've already lost my thought here. We're on, okay, you will not covet, you will not desire the house of what? Re'eha, your friend. And we just had this word, it's that companion, a friend with one who has conversation, the lover of a woman. It's you get it, it's somebody close. And then it says the negative article tachmod. Wait a minute, have I backed up? Oh, he's just saying it again. You will not covet the house of this neighbor. Now it says you will not covet Eshet, and it's from Isha, which is the wife. You won't covet the guy's wife. It's a woman of every age and condition, whether married or not. But in this case, we are talking about a married couple. A female used of an unmarried woman, also used of a concubine of one espoused. So if she's betrothed, if she's engaged, to put it in English, uh, she's off limits. You can't go desiring her, even though she hasn't tied the knot yet. Then it says re'eha, of your friend. This is that close friend. The avdo, and male servant his servant. Um, This, in the Hebrew world, if you're having servants, there's only two kinds. One is, well, they're both indentured servants because they both get a paycheck. But you have the ones where, let's say, um, let's use America. America, they did something, instead of going by what God said, they decided that they could outdo God. And in that, God said that you could have servants. If you have a war and those people want peace with you and they offer to be your servant, they are allowed to be your servant. But if they're your servant, they have to get a paycheck. You have to provide a house for them. You have to provide food for them. You have to provide clothing for them. Kind of real similar to what we did with the American Indians, don't you think? But not quite. It wasn't exactly what that was supposed to be because they've never served us. Although the funny thing about it is, we made a covenant with them, we broke it, we made another one, we broke it, we made another one, we broke it. We just kept breaking our covenant. We kept stealing their land and kept sending them somewhere else because the land meant, we could make money off of it or whatever. And ultimately, they wound up being able to get into the casino business, and now they're making all kinds of money. I think it's hysterical. But anyway, if we would have fought them in this war and taken their land, had there been a reason for us to have this war, us just conquering this land was not right. But this is not a really good example. But when Israel, when they went to war, they were attacked. They did not attack. They didn't just go and take something they weren't supposed to take. The land is God's, and God set that land aside for Israel. But some people who did things that's so nasty that I can't even say them on TV, over the internet, over the airwaves. I can't say things like, I can't tell you what they did, but it was that bad. And so God wanted them driven out of his land. Well, when they found out Israel was coming, they attacked Israel. And they didn't do so well in that. But along the way, there were other groups that attacked Israel. One of them in particular said, okay, that was stupid on our part. We're all gonna die if we don't surrender. So part of our surrender is we will be your servants, which was okay. God said that was all right, but we weren't allowed to beat them. We weren't allowed to treat them as inferior human beings or any of that kind of stuff. We were not allowed to do that in God's world. In man's world, that's different, but in God's world, you weren't allowed to do that. They were just a different type of indentured servant, in that they were not allowed to ever go out because of their covenant that they made to save their countrymen. They were not allowed, and their offspring were not allowed to go out free. Now, on the other hand, you had the ones who indentured themselves on purpose for a certain period of time. If they were Torah observant or became Torah observant, then there was a loophole here that God gave. If those people came in and they became Torah observant and lived out their life under Torah observance and raised their children under Torah observance, they weren't allowed to be slaves more than 7 years. And so, because they'd become a Hebrew. And if you were a Hebrew, you were never allowed to be a slave for more than 7 years, right? And that would count down. If you were 4 years away from the year of Jubilee, you could only be a servant for 4 years. You could not be a servant for 7, because the year of Jubilee would free you. And of course, everybody in that world knew this. So the what do you call that, where you go back and forth? Negotiation would have been different because of it. But you had the ones that could not free themselves, and you had the ones that were only allowed to be servants for so long. So, of course, unless the ones that couldn't free themselves, there actually was a way for them to free their children. There just was no way for them to free themselves. That it was not. It should never have lasted more than a single generation. But anyway, on both sides, they both got a paycheck. On the ones that uh, lost in a war, they were given a house, they were given clothes, they were given food. The ones who were Jewish, who gave themselves into that thing, they had to provide their own house, their own food, their own clothing. So there was a balance there. And when America came along, they decided to abolish slavery, which is where I say they went wrong, because slavery is, if God's way, is not a bad thing. I think that there are people in this world, and I believe that I'm one of them, that would have been better off going into indentured servitude. And anybody who's been in the military can relate to this. I was in indentured servitude to the military. I had so many years that I had to go. I couldn't get out until, that time was up, blah, blah, blah. And I had to put in my time. But I was a servant of those people. And they owned me to the degree that if I got a sunburn and couldn't do my job, they could actually court martial me because I had destroyed government property. And to that end, the Bible is in agreement. That is how much that person owns you. But there is an end, right? And you're the one that chose to do it, not that person. It wasn't done by force. By force would be a whole different ball game, and it's not gonna hold its mustard. So going over to Africa and taking these slaves by force was wrong. That part should never have happened, and that part should have been abolished. But slavery itself, I don't agree with, because I think that there are people who will never learn to handle money. They will never be able to keep a steady roof over their head and things like that, and they're just better off being indentured servants their whole lives. And other people can do it for a year, 2, 3, 4, and learn to handle money and learn to save money and learn to be responsible for themselves, and then they can go out when their time is up and be productive. But there are those who simply cannot. And I think that we need to really keep that in. I know that's controversial, but I think that that's where we got it wrong. Instead of lining up with what the Word of God said, we thought, oh, well, we'll just make this blanket thing, no slavery, period. I don't know if that's right. But if this guy has this servant, and it's according to God's law and not man's, somebody's made themselves an indentured servant, or they've, you know, made their self an indentured servant because they were losing in a war they should never have started, because that's the way that goes down, then you're not supposed to go covet that. Golly, that guy there is really, really good at carpentry. I could sure use a good carpenter like him. They don't go coveting that. And then if they have a female servant, it says Amato, and his female servant, oh man, she's a good cook, or man, she's a good sewer, or man, she's whatever she's good at. I don't know. But you shouldn't be wanting that guy's stuff, because at that point those people are that guy's stuff. I was the property of the U.S. government for a time, and it's okay. I made it through. It's not oppressive. I'm just saying, if we could see it in those eyes, it wouldn't bother us. Then it's Vishal, and you don't want his ox. And it's literally an ox, so called from its strength and its boldness. It's used of bulls. They say the same thing. This is a general word for the one of the ox bribe. Don't know what that means. I typed something in goofy there. I don't know what that's supposed to say. But look, your ox in a world where everybody's a farmer and somebody has an ox, that shows wealth. That shows someone who saved and scrimped and worked hard, because if you had an ox, you had, one of them $70,000 Cadillac vehicles. You know what I'm saying? You had something really nice. And if I Don and I both used to work for a guy who go out and pay $70,000 for a Cadillac SUV, and that was his ox. He drove it to all the sites that he went to, and he hauled stuff with it, and used it for what he used it for pleasure too, but he used it for his work, and that was his ox. So I shouldn't be wanting his ox. Remember, this is Hebrew. It's the thing that makes you your money. It's your work vehicle. Then it's the Hamoro and the donkey. So that's the lesser one. That's the Nah, it's a little bit, probably better than a Pinto, because Donnie used to have one. Don't go there. Anyway, I'm talking for those of you who are old enough to remember a real Pinto, Ford Pinto car. Anyway, so it's a donkey, so called from the reddish color, which in the southern country belongs not only to the wild donkey, but also to the, wow, my typing was awful in this. Common, there's a G in there for some reason, domestic donkey. But anyway, again, this is my Dodge pickup, my old junky Dodge pickup. That's my donkey. That's, I pull my trailer with it. I move things around. I haul whatever needs to be hauled, the equipment and the toys and the whatever back and forth. It's my donkey. And that is what they mean here. Don't go wishing you had that stuff, you know. And this is the whole that's and all asher, and all that re'acha, and all that your friend, that close companion person, and all that stuff that he has. So is there a difference? Are these bullet points? You don't want his wife, you don't want his maid servant, his male servant, you don't want his ox, and blah, blah, blah. But if you want something else that's not listed, you're okay, right? No, those were given as examples. You're not supposed to want, and that's how it winds up. The very last thing it says, you're not supposed to want anything that he has. All right, so the translation, and remember, we're on Shemot 14 if you're English, if you're in a Christian Bible, 17 if you're in a Jewish Bible. Do not covet your friend's house, nor his wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your friend's, right? So does this open up the door for you wanting to covet something that doesn't belong to someone close to you? Actually, it does. It does. Maybe it'll come up later. Even Ezra, about the words do not covet, even Ezra said that we must train ourselves to be content with that which God has given. And if there's any Christians out there listening, you remember there was a Jewish rabbi who wrote about 1/3 or more, 2/3 of the Christian New Testament. You remember he said something interesting. He said no matter what situation he found himself in, whether rich or poor or hungry or or full, he said he found a way to be content. Sounds a lot like what even Ezra said. Same thing. Okay, let's move on to Shemot. It'll be 2018 in the Jewish Bible, 2015 in the English. This is for information purposes. This is not law. But it says, and this is my translation, by the way, of the Hebrew, and all the people seeing the claps of thunder. Now, the Hebrew text says voices, but it's an idiom for claps of thunder because it's sound. And the lightning and the sound of the shofar and the mountain smoking, and seeing it, the people trembled, of course, with fear, and stood far away. Concerning that, Rashi believed that the people actually saw sound coming from the mouth of God. And I've taught about that before, that they saw it as lightning hitting something and sparks flying out and touching the tongues of all 70 of the elders. And there may be something to that. Maybe there's not. I think it's more tradition than reality. But he saw that because he was not Hebraic. He did not understand Hebrew at all. Very few of the sages did. Very few of them even spoke Hebrew. And so they took everything very literal. They were trained in Platonic schools, and they thought everything up the way Plato thought of it, and they didn't see the Hebraic meaning behind things. And It just is what it is. I'm not saying that to insult the man. I'm just saying that that's just the way these guys were because of where the time they lived in, Dark Ages, and the educational systems in the state of disrepair that they were at the time. It led to things like this, and so he took things very literal. All right, so then we look at Shemot 2019 in the Jewish Bible, 2016 in the Christian. And they said to Moshe, "You speak with us, and we will obey. But do not let God speak with us, lest we die." Now remember, God has already told Moshe that he's going to speak out loud so everybody can hear him, so that they will believe him and obey him from now on. Remember that? It seems like God's words are coming true here. About this, even Ezra pointed out that the leaders of the people actually spoke to Moshe. It wasn't the people. So you read this, it says, and they said to Moshe, "You speak with us, and we will obey." Could you imagine all those people saying that? Somehow everyone had the same. No, everybody went to their leaders, and their leaders went to Moshe, and that was the overall feeling of that point in time. The next verse, it says, "And Moshe said to the people, 'Do not be afraid. God came so that he may prove you, and that his reverence be,'" it says, "on your faces," literally, but before you, "so that you do not commit Torah rebellion." Remember, because sin, that's Torah rebellion. Casuto said, "Fear of him, not dread, but reverence." And I wish we all knew this. People, I asked a guy what the fear of God was one time, and he said, "Oh, I teach my kids about this all the time. They need to be terrified of God because, he could hit them with a lightning bolt any moment." Oh, how sad that was. But it's amazing how many people believe that that's what it means. No, the fear of God is the awe and the reverence of God. Just think if imagine in your own mind that God stood before you and said, "I am," what would you do? You'd fall as dead, just like John did, right? Yohanan. He said, "I fell as dead." He didn't even have the wherewithal to put his hands out in front of him and catch him. He just went face forward, right? And I think that's what we're talking about. It would just be so awe-inspiring, so overpowering that you would just go face first, right? Because it's reverence. You don't do it because you're scared. You do it because the realization of the Almighty God and how big He is, and how little you are, how holy He is, and how unholy you are, and how, you know what I'm saying? That would all come flooding in at the same moment. So it's reverence. The next verse, "And the people stood far off." This was scary for them. "And Moshe drew near the cloud where God was." So they were reverence of him and they were terrified of him all at the same time. Even Ezra pointed out that Moshe drew near in contrast to the people there that were far away. Moshe came close, the people went far away. But what did Moshe do the first time he experienced God? He jumped up, screamed like a schoolgirl, and ran away. No, well, it's kind of like that if you read it in Hebrew. I'm just saying, particularly when the alligator or crocodile, whatever it was, scared him. I know they say snake, but look at the Hebrew. I'm just saying. The next verse, "And Yahweh said to Moshe, 'Thus you will say to the children of Israel, you have seen that from the heavens I have spoken with you.'" You have seen. Rashi pointed out that the children of Israel experienced these events in person. They were not just told about it. You have seen. "From the heavens I have spoken to you." Even Ezra said that the way to look at it was to imagine God standing on the mountain with his uh, head in the heavens. Or it may be that God is referring to himself being in the cloud, or it is idiomatic to mean that the people heard God's voice above them. Could be. I'm just thinking out loud here, just thinking out loud. All right, so now we're back to law. This is a law pertaining to word number 2, Devar number 2. It's verse 20 in the English, verse 23 in the Jewish. Literally it says, "Not shall make me God's silver and God's gold, not shall make they to you. And so, if you thought about that, you can figure it out for sure. Starts off with lo, the negative article, and then it says ta'asun, shall make. Now, we've in this series already had this word is properly to labor, to work about anything, to make, to produce by labor, to manufacture, to fabricate, those sort of things. I hope you remember all that. This is et. You will not make uh, of me. You will not make me Elohe. You will not make gods out of me. No representation of a god from me. And that's God in plural. It's really it's we say God, Elohe or Elohim. Those are not really the words for God. It's really the word for mighty hero or majestic. And they use these words of human beings. So it's not really the word for God. That's just we just generically say that. It's and remember this is the word that's from the unused root, which is Allah, the fat butt. Just remember that. Just bringing some things back to light here. And you won't make gods that represent the God who created the heavens and earth. It says chesef. You won't make them out of silver. Belohe. And you won't make gods. So I get through this. Zahab. You won't make them out of silver. And now Zahab. You won't make them out of gold. Nor ta'asu. That's that to make, to fabricate, to produce with labor. Lahem. You won't do it for yourself. So the verse says, do not make of me. This is God talking, so I should point at me. Don't make of me gods of silver and gods of gold. You shall not make them. Don't do it. Do not make. Nachmanides said that these words are a warning against both the belief in idols and their manufacture. And this is really true because how do you manufacture and fabricate an idol in your heart? Through your thought. You fabricate this thought, you manufacture this thought, and it becomes a belief, and the belief becomes an idol. You believe in something that isn't real. So he's right about that to that degree. In Hebrew, it does both mean uh, you don't do it in your heart, and you don't do it with material. Even Ezra and the Sepharno said that this phrase being repeated was in keeping with the literary style of the Hebrew language. I agree with that. It says gods of silver. About the words gods of silver. Rashi pointed out that Shemot 25:8 gives an explanation for the gold uh, cherubim. An exemption, sorry. I thought that sounded funny. So there is an exemption for the gold cherubim that are over the ark. At least that's what he says. We'll find that out when we come to it. So now we have another law, but it's pertaining to word number 1. Literally it says, and we're in the English Bible is 21 and the Hebrew Bible is 24. It literally says, altar ground shall make to me and sacrifice you on it, burnt offerings you and peace offerings you, flock you and herd you in all the places which I will record, authority me, I will come to you and bless you. Okay, so it starts off with Mizbach. That's an altar. It's an altar of burnt offering, an altar of incense, an altar that's made of gold that's in the temple. It's the altar. Then it says Adama. So that's dirt. That's the ground that you stand on. Dirt. Hear Adam in there? Adam. Dam is blood, but Adama is dirt. And the man was made out of what? Dirt. I'm just saying. All right, so this is ta'aseh. That's the labor, to work, to produce, to manufacture, to fabricate. So you won't make it out of dirt, or you will, to me, or you, was that, there was a negative article there? I don't remember now. I'm getting confused. I've confused myself. Altar, ground, shall, oh no, you shall make. There is no negative article. I don't know where I got the idea of a negative article. So you shall make it of dirt to me, speaking of God, vizabachta, and sacrifice you. It's to slaughter animals, especially to slay and sacrifice. Yeah, let's call that a barbecue so people aren't so scared of it, because that is literally what we're talking about. You're going to have a barbecue, you're going to have something to eat. This is alive, which is upon his. The Ive in the end makes it his, so it's on top of his. Then it says et. Then it says o loteha, burnt offerings you. So it's your burnt offerings. What is laid on the altar? What is offered on the altar? Your burnt offering can be a cow, it can be a sheep, it can be a bird, right? These things. It could be a fish. And this is ve'et shelamecha, and your peace offerings. Uh, Peace offerings are thank offerings that you give those to God when you're showing gratitude. Those are called peace offerings. If you're afraid that you've committed a sin, and the sin is that what the Bible says to make that right is you got to go offer say a lamb and two doves or something like that. That's also a peace offering, because it brings peace between you and God. He says you did this wrong, said not to do it, you did it, and to make it right, somewhere in the Bible it says you have to give this offering to make that right. That's why that's called a peace offering. It's not that God's angry with you, it's just that that's your punishment. Just because you're being punished does not mean God's angry. Then it says zoncha, so that's the flock. They call them small cattle in Hebrew. Those would be sheep and goats. It's rarely ever used only of sheep. It's almost always used for sheep and goat both, because they were always mixed together. Then it says ve'et karecha, and from your herd. So you got it from the flock and from the herd. So the herd is the cattle, it's the oxen, and it's the big cows. The sheep are the little cows. There you go. And it says behol, and in all hamakom, in all the places all the places. That's really all that means. Asher, which. Then it says as here. I will record. It's to remember, to recollect. We've already had this word, to bring to mind. The origin seems to lie in the idea of pricking and piercing, so it's the hammering and the chiseling in the stone. It's a permanent memory. Then it says et shemi. Et shemi. So it's authority, me. I say authority, you read in your book, it'll say name. But remember, the name, let's see, where's that thing that I found? By usage chiefly Hebraistic, 100% Hebraistic, it's not chiefly. The name is used for everything which the name covers, everything the thought or feeling of which is roused in the mind by mentioning, hearing, and remembering. In English is found a derivative of the usage of the word name being used for authority. Stop in the name of the law. So you tell someone to stop because you have the authority by law given to you to tell them to stop, and they have to obey, right? And so the name of God is his authority. What is his authority? It's the Torah. You should always keep that in mind. It's one of those things that's a foundational thing that everybody that reads the Bible ought to know before they ever pick it up. Then it says avo, boa avo. I will come. I will come, because they put the olive in the front, and it's I will, not that I have, but I will, because bo would mean that I have or I am, but avo is I will. I will come, I will enter in. It's a place which anyone enters, to enter into a house, to enter into a synagogue, to enter into wherever. I will come. And it says, Elecha, I will come to you. It's of turning toward somebody. And it says, Uve ochticha, and bless you. Are you guys hearing this? This is God saying, I will come to you and I will bless you. Wow. But to bless, barach, that's to bend at the knees, to kneel down. The primary notion lies in the breaking down. This is where we all fight God the hardest. In the times that He's trying to break us down. And remember, it's like the camel. The camel is given a command to lie down on all fours. They load all the stuff on him, and then he's commanded to stand up, and then they go on their journey. And then when it comes time to rest, he's told to lie down. They give him water, they give him food, they rub his ears and talk to him and refresh him. They offload some stuff, maybe onload some more stuff, whatever, because it depends on who's doing what. But God does that to us in our lives. He's going to make us slow down and get some rest, and then He's also going to make us load up and do some work. So anyway, the translation, remember, we're Shemot, this is Exodus. In the English is 21, and in the Jewish is 24. You shall not make an altar from the ground. You shall make an altar from the ground to me, and you will sacrifice your burnt offerings and your peace offerings of your flocks and your herds in all the places that my authority is remembered. I will come to you and bless you. The place where God's name is recorded is the place where God's Torah, His authority, is remembered. In other words, is heard with the ears, understood with the heart and mind, and obeyed by those who love Him. Verse 22 in the English, 25 in the Jewish, literally says, and if altar stones shall make to me, not shall build them hewing, for cutting tool you, swinging you on it, and you defile it. Honestly, if you read that real slow a few times, you'd get it. It starts off with ve'im, it's an if, mizbach, and if your altar, we just had that word, avanim, is of stones. If you don't want to make it out of dirt, and you'd rather make it out of stones, because when they started it was made out of dirt, but by the time you get to David and his son Shlomo, if you're English, that's David and Solomon. When you get to their time, they want to build a stone one and make it all pretty and fancy and make it last a while, right? So and if, or perhaps, and when you want to build it out of stone, so it's rocks that you pick up off the ground. Ta'aseh, then you will make it, you'll produce it, you'll fabricate it, right? To me, you'll make it to me. Then it has the negative article, not man. Not you won't build it, you won't erect it, you won't construct it. Gazit, through hewing, you won't cut the stone. So when you build the altar portion of this thing, you take the stones just the way they were naturally. It says ki, which means because, harbaha, because a cutting tool, they say that of a sword because it will cut, as in laying waste. It's sharp, it's an edge, it's applied to other cutting instruments, just about anything. The circumcising knife they use this word for. So it's by cutting it through henafta, through swinging. You're taking this thing, and back in the day, actually, I think still to this day, when they chip out stones, they call that chinking. And like when they would chink out a cave to bury somebody in, that busting up of that rock was called chinking. And when they busted up a long line to break a big piece of stone off to make blocks out of it, chinking. It's called chinking. And God's saying, no. The altar part of it cannot be chinked. You cannot swing this thing and bust on that rock. Is aleha. You won't do that for yourself. Because va tehaleha. Because if you do, he says, you pervert it. God does not want his altar built out of hewn stone, is all he's saying. So The verse says, "And if you make an altar of stones to me, do not build it of hewn stones, for swinging your cutting tool against it defiles it." That's all he's saying. The next verse literally says, "And naught shall go up with steps on altar me, that naught shall uncover nakedness you on it." It's real important that we understand this, because this is an idiom that, oh, so many people have messed up. It starts off with velo, which is and not, so it's the negative article. Ta ale, you will not go up, to ascend, to be high, to be lifted up. It is very often used in speaking of those who go from a lower region to a higher, right? Metaphorically, to increase. This is important. Metaphorically, to increase, to become strong. A garment, when putting on, is said to go up. A razor, when used for the head, going up, you're going over. A bandage, when applied to a wound. Also, things which are taken up or carried away. They go from the low place to a high place. Then it says v'ma'alot, and with steps. It's ascent. It's going up to a higher region. Metaphorically, did I mention metaphorically the things which rise up in your mind? In other words, thoughts which pass through the mind. Metaphorically, the things which rise up in your mind. In other words, your thoughts. There's a lot more I can say about it. It's a step by which anyone goes up. The steps should be can't think of the word. I'm looking at the English. I can't think of the Hebrew. Anyway, it's staircase. Just think of it as going from lower to upper. And then it says all, which is upon, misbehi, on my altar. So don't make steps going up, right? That's where we're going with this. But remember, we're metaphorically. Don't lose that. Asher is our next word, lo, that not tigale shall uncover. Properly, to be naked, to make naked, to be naked. Hence, to be bald. So if you're bald on the head, you got a naked head. Especially used of the ear by taking away the hair. So they pull away the hair so they can whisper in your ear, makes your ear naked. It's of the face by taking away a veil. Of the face by taking away the veil. It makes the face naked. And you need to this is real important that you understand this is of a face being made naked by removing a veil. To cast away a garment would make you naked. But, to make something naked is to disclose, to reveal, to uncover. So you can make the truth naked, right? If everyone is told the truth, then the truth has been made naked. It's to uncover anyone's ear by taking away the hair, as done by those who are about to disclose some secret thing. I think I said that already. You guys get the idea. Then it says, ervatecha, nakedness you. Metaphorically, the nakedness of a land. In other words, a part of the land unfortified. So it's the part of the land that doesn't have the fence around it to keep you safe. Or, from enemies. And keep your animals safe from predators. That kind of thing. This word is also used of shame, filthiness, anything unclean, also of dishonor. Your nakedness is your shame, your filthiness, your uncleanliness, your dishonor. You need to really contemplate that one. Not for personal reasons, just so you can understand the verse. Alive just means on it. So here's the literal translation. This would be 23 in the English. Well, I shouldn't say English, but 23 in the Christian Bible, 26 in the Jewish Bible. Do not ascend with steps on my altar, that your nakedness not be uncovered on it. All right, so what does that tell you? Well, Rashi believed that not being allowed to have steps equated to we must have a ramp. But why not put a hole in the altar? Or maybe make it short so no one has to go up a hill. You know, if the altar is really high and we make a hole or a door, why don't you just take it in there so you don't have to go up? Or why don't you make the altar a little shorter than you so you don't have to go up, right? Just thinking out loud here. I believe there is a much more accurate way to translate this verse, and it would go something like this. Do not increase the thoughts in your mind over my altar, that your shame be discovered on it. Do not increase the thoughts in your mind over my altar, that your shame be discovered on it. How much dishonor does a man bring to the altar of God if he ascends the altar thinking he is all that in a bag of chips? Not to mention the distinct possibility that he will make a huge mistake because he is not paying attention to the reason for his being there. All right. Well, this concludes our journey through chapter 20. Shalom, shalom, y'all.